Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.
And we were right on the border, and we went to California to watch it. So I distinctly remember going through all that traffic.
Hello there. This is Dave, and I'm an original trilogy kid.
And this is Elora. I'm a prequel trilogy kid.
Welcome to What Does Star Wars Mean to You, the show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars to take the hate out of the debate and look at the franchise from a certain point of view, one fan at a time.
Our guest today is no stranger to the geek world. He runs a YouTube channel, Truman the Gray Merchant, which does have a focus on Magic the Gathering. He's the host To My Chagrin, a Twilight podcast, and he's an award-winning photographer. And though that does cover a lot in the geek world, it's his love for that galaxy far, far away that brings him here today. So please give a warm hello there to Truman Deree. Woo!
Hello.
Hello.
I didn't know that you all did the introduction live each time. I thought it was recorded.
Sometimes we have to re-record it because you saw us kind of stumble over ourselves, but we really try to set the scene. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's very professional.
Tell us, Truman, are you...
Yeah, go for it. You see why we have to do this?
It's the one line I get. Tell us, Truman, are you ready to share with the world what does Star Wars mean to you?
Absolutely. I feel like at any given time, I'm ready to share that with the world. So I'm glad that I have an avenue today.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Yes. We like to start with 5 with the Force. This is a standard set of 5 questions we ask all our guests, just to get your kind of base Star Wars fandom. I think the first one, I always say it's super easy, but lately it's been a little tougher.
I think these are actually pretty tough.
Yeah. Which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
Well, I will preface the entire segment with I'm very bad at choosing favorites. So all of these questions are going to be a challenge for me.
Fair.
But I will do my best.
Today's favorite. That's usually, yeah.
Well, I'm going to go with Empire Strikes Back. I think when I was maybe 12, I decided, people always ask what your favorite movie is. I'm just going to, and that's a very complicated question for me. I'm just going to commit to Empire Strikes Back now. And just carry that for the rest of my life.
There you go.
And I think it's a strong choice. It's a movie that I think is
solid choice.
I find endlessly rewatchable.
Yep.
I just have a lot of fond memories for Star Wars in general. And that's probably one of the pinnacles of it for me.
I think it's kind of awesome at 12 you realized this, because at 12 I was still like...
Yeah, my favorite movie was A Bug's Life, so like...
It's
a lot.
Yeah. And then committing to it and still standing by it, I think that's pretty strong. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
For this next one, I need to roll a d6. What is your favorite alien species?
Okay. I think today I'm going to go with the Wookiees.
Great.
Oh, nice.
Good choice.
I think it's just, for one, a great design, especially for the 70s. I think it's very impressive, and they got it, movie 1, and they've just stuck with it because it was perfect to the first time. I think Chewbacca is a great character.
Yep.
I love the combination of dog, but also he's probably smarter than Han.
Yes, yep.
He's kind of the best of both worlds. I like that they are very intelligent and skilled, but also have that connection with nature. I think that's a really cool combination, and they have an aesthetic that's pretty unique with their forest cities and their wooden technology. I like all the more minor Wookiees. I forget his name, but the Jedi one from the Clone Wars, who was in the Bad Batch. He's great.
Clone Wars. Yeah, I can't think of his name either.
Yeah, the only problem is some of their names are hard to remember. But
yes.
Well, and we're both terrible with names, so
me too.
We're really qualified to be doing the notes.
Yes.
I can give you 1,000 facts about a character, but can't remember their name.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so funny how the brain works that way. I really love what you said about he's seems like a dog, but he's smarter than Han. Have you ever seen that kind of theory or meme talking about how Chewbacca, Han is the pet to Chewbacca because Chewbacca will outlive Han. Chewbacca kind of takes care of him and makes sure
better
that
weapons. Yeah.
he has better weapons and everything. And actually, Han is the pet. I just think that's a really funny and true statement.
Absolutely. I love that meme. And especially the part about how
Yeah.
he has to tell people that, like, he's still adjusting. You know, sometimes he's rough with other people. Just give him some time to get used to you. I think that's very funny.
Yeah.
He's also like a master engineer. I mean, Han definitely can handle the Falcon, but like it's really Chewie that's the one doing all the hard labor.
Yeah, exactly. He's the mechanic.
I like his little goggles.
Yes. Okay, question number 3. What is your favorite line to quote?
So I think the one that I think of most often is Qui-Gon Jinn's "There is always a bigger fish."
Yes.
And I think of this in 2 contexts. The first is when I see like a literal really big fish. So, you know, I'm at an aquarium or Bass Pro or something, and there's a massive alligator gar or marlin. I think that's a big fish.
Hilarious.
And that reminds me of when in a movie they pointed out a big fish. But I also think it's such a recurring trope, and that is just the perfect way of describing it, to the extent that TV tropes has that trope. It's called bigger fish. Whenever something like that happens in any form of media, that's what they call it, because it's just the perfect summation. So anytime I'm ever consuming media and I run across there's something that seems really big and impressive, but then there's something even bigger, I just think, there's always a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish.
There's always a Death Star too. And I really think that line, like over the years, that line has come to mean to me so much the theme of Star Wars, that there's always something out there that can get you.
Yeah, I like that. I haven't thought of it from that angle, but I think it is true. I think that there's always something bigger than us, for good or for ill, and we have to learn to accept that and figure out what that means to us personally.
Yeah.
And sometimes to quite literally escape from the jaws of the bigger fish. So, off of favorite quote, can you do any Star Wars impressions or impersonations?
Can I? Yes. Should I? I don't know. This is probably the one I put the most thought into, and I'm going to attempt Yoda, which first I thought,
good.
Yoda, that's pretty good. But then I listened to all the episodes and realized that like half your guests do Yoda, so I'm not as special as I thought.
Well, I think Yoda's just a very popular one. Everyone has a Yoda. It's like almost
I don't.
In the 80s, everyone had a Ronald Reagan impersonation.
Sure. That's so funny.
Okay.
So
I'm going to go for it. And then if I embarrass myself too much and disrespect both the character of Yoda and the man Frank Oz, I'll ask you to cut it.
We'll just hear beep.
Yes.
Do or do not. There is no try.
That's pretty good.
Great.
Judge me by my size, do you?
I love the little laugh of before that
humming.
You put in before.
Like,
yeah.
Because he's always like, what words will I use today?
I feel like his little chuckles are an under-recognized aspect of his charm.
Totally.
Yes. And it's really funny how when someone does an impersonation and adds that in, you're like, oh, there he is.
Yeah.
That's him in that chuckle.
Yeah, for sure.
And the final question, besides the movies,
we're all wrapping up.
yeah. Thank you for joining us. Besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be a TV show, a comic book, a novel, a game.
I think I am going to go with Star Wars: The Clone Wars, because I think that has had perhaps the largest effect of any non-movie aspect of Star Wars. So the Clone Wars movie was, if not the first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters, certainly the first one I remember seeing in theaters. So even though it's not the most fondly remembered now, as a kid, I didn't realize that, and it was very special for me because I know a lot of people have this feeling with whatever the Star Wars movie of their youth was, and for me, that was that. It was very exciting. I distinctly remember when we watched it. So at the time, my family was living in Mexico because my parents worked for the State Department.
Okay.
And we were right on the border, and we went to California to watch it. So I distinctly remember going through all that traffic.
Wow.
And I just remember really enjoying it. I remember the show coming out and that being very special.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to watch it super consistently because especially it was pre-streaming, and when you're a kid, you're at the whim of a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I
Which
didn't
Netflix
watch.
DVD was coming that week, right? Yeah. Like.
I didn't watch all of it, but whenever I could, that was super cool.
Yeah.
And then after that, we moved to New Zealand, and I got to
wow.
watch it even less frequently.
Mm.
But then when I was in high school, we moved back to the US to Virginia, and my local library had every episode on DVD.
Oh,
So I got to watch
wow.
the entire
Oh.
show all the way through for the first time, and that was super exciting. That was a big deal for me. And then even beyond the show itself, I'm a big Lego Star Wars fan,
Mm.
and a lot of my Lego Star Wars sets are related to the Clone Wars because when I was in like prime Lego buying age, not that I stopped,
Yes.
but that was what there is a lot of on the shelves.
I feel like prime Lego buying age is anywhere from 5 to about 73.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, actually, I'd say prime people buying me Lego age.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. That is if it's a period of time, and it sucks when it ends. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When you started talking about the Clone Wars, you said that it was it had the largest effect on Star Wars, maybe outside of any of the shows, and maybe even some of the movies. Why do you say that?
Just for me, because it was the first new Star Wars that I was really cognizant of.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
So that was just very exciting. And since it went on for quite a while, it had that prolonged effect. And it's also directly connected to a lot of the later shows. So if I
Yep.
can cheat and say that Rebels and Bad Batch and some of the live action shows are, extensions somewhat of the Clone Wars, that just adds on to its effect on me.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you that they do feel like direct extensions of the Clone Wars
Mm-hmm.
because it's just, it covers so much and explores so much. Do you have, let me ask you this, and I think we're already talking about it, but was Clone Wars your introduction to Star Wars, or did something introduce you prior to Clone Wars, and can you take us through that?
Yes, it definitely was not my introduction. And I think part of what made it so special was that it was the new version of something I was already so familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I've been exposed to Star Wars since before I had a brain capable of forming memories.
I feel like a
Right
lot
on.
of us are that way.
Yes.
So
We're all here because of our parents. It's really just one large support group. But anyway.
So yes, my parents definitely put Star Wars in my life from a very young age. I have some of my earliest memories were being afraid of the Jabba's palace scene in Return of the Jedi.
Oh.
Yep.
So that was probably when I was 3 or 4. But overall, very positive memories from a very early age. I remember in first grade talking about it with my friends and trying to convince someone that Boba Fett was a bounty hunter, not a bunny hunter.
I
Oh,
feel like that needs to be a character. Boba Fett, bunny hunter.
I guess he's Easter themed.
Oh my god.
Yes, yeah. He's all in pastels.
Yeah.
So, were your parents giant Star Wars fans, and you kind of picked up on that, or
Was
how did?
around?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say my dad, especially,
Mhm.
he was probably like the prototypical original trilogy kid. He told me how he would take neighbors' trash out for 10 cents,
Mm-hmm.
and every time he made enough for a movie ticket, he'd go and watch New Hope.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Oh, so speaking of your parents, it sounds like they work for the they worked for the State Department, and it sounds like you moved a lot, including kind of like overseas.
Yes.
That's tough as a kid. My father also worked in the federal government, and we never moved overseas, but we moved like every 2 years growing up. So I think the question is, did Star Wars have any kind of impact on your day to day? Was that like anything that, I don't know, maybe got you through those times? Is that it? Like, how did Star Wars kind of impact your childhood, especially moving like continents?
Yeah, so I have lived in 6 countries and 3 states.
Wow.
So yes, I moved around a lot as a kid, and Star Wars was definitely helpful in various ways. For one, it's just a good, constant comfort.
Yeah.
We had the original trilogy on VHS. I think The Phantom Menace also on VHS, and then
Yes.
Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith on DVD. So we would watch those all the time. Had a lot of toys. It was always just a nice thing to watch. But I think also more importantly, it was something that everyone everywhere knows.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh, yeah.
I've talked about it with my friends in every country I've been to.
Yeah.
So that was super cool. I remember when I moved back to Virginia in high school, like I said, I distinctly remember that someone that I'm still very close to, one of our first conversations was talking about The Force Awakens and the trailer, and we were super excited. So it is directly related to multiple friendships in my life.
That's really cool. I love hearing that it was like a community builder rather than something that was, more of like solely a comfort because maybe you felt like an alien yourself in certain respects, right? Like, because I always felt like that when we moved to a new place, and I would definitely be binging the Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones. Yeah, no, that's super rad. I think the thing that we're learning the most out of this podcast, I don't want to speak for you, Dave, but it's just like how much Star Wars is that community. Even though for, I think, various periods in all of our lives, it felt like it was just kind of like our little nerd thing as individuals. And now it's becoming more of like what we share with others. That's cool.
I think it's really neat. You got to kind of experience the fandom in 6 different countries.
Yes, that's so
I think that's incredible. Like, do you remember if there was any kind of differences in how people or similarities that surprised you? How people Star Wars'd with you? If that's a question.
Well, one example is that in the US, Star Wars has a good claim to be like the sci-fi adjacent property, especially pre-superhero boom. But in New Zealand, Doctor Who probably had that.
Yeah.
And Star Wars was still very prominent, but it wasn't quite the cultural juggernaut that it is in the US.
Yep.
Was it hard, like when you're in New Zealand, is it hard being the second tier sci-fi fantasy fan? Or did you become a Doctor Who fan as well?
I did. I think I was all right in that regard. I definitely enjoyed Doctor Who, and I definitely talked about that with my friends. And that was between trilogies, so there wasn't a whole lot of new Star Wars things to talk about anyway, especially since my friend group hadn't really realized the expanded universe yet. So I think it was probably a good thing that we had different properties to talk about. It's nice to have options.
Yep.
Now, can you take us through, like, Clone Wars you saw at I'm going to assume, a relatively early age. It's one of the first movies you saw. And then The Force Awakens comes out. And now you're like 15, 16. How did you react to that trailer? And was it an event that you and the whole family attended? Or was that something more that you did with you and your friends?
Both.
Nice.
I saw it multiple times with different groups. I was very excited. For as much as the Clone Wars was important to me, I do think that there's a different feeling with a live action, numbered sequel Star Wars movie.
Oh, yeah.
First time I'm seeing that in theaters. It's equally new to me as it is to the people who are older than me who have been with Star Wars longer, and we're all sharing this experience.
Yeah.
I think the Force Awakens trailer definitely encouraged speculation. So I remember talking to a lot of people about who's behind the mask. Is Luke going to be evil? What does it mean for the Force to awaken? Who's related to who?
I remember one of the first rumors I heard was that all the titles were going to create a sentence. So it's like The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and then no one knew what the final one was going to be.
Yeah.
I just think that's a funny little memory
that
because it went nowhere. The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker. It's not a sentence, I don't think.
I'm curious, what order would you think is best to introduce the films to somebody new, especially kind of coming in it? Because I would say you're like right in between being like a prequel and sequel kid, maybe. So I think from your perspective, that's a really interesting question.
I think we're going to have to add a fourth one, a Clone Wars kid.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty accurate description of me. I would say that for someone's first time, I would show them in release order, at least for the main 9.
Yep.
I think that will give them as close of an approximation as they can to watching them as they came out. I think that it preserves the twists of the original trilogy. So I would say release order first time. And then I think in subsequent viewings, it is fun to watch them in chronological order and to see that development. But again, I think first time order of release.
Yep. Right on.
Has your opinion of certain movies changed over the years? Like, were there things that you didn't like that now you really like, or vice versa?
So I would say yes in various ways. I think as a child, I was very uncritical of the prequel trilogy, and now I can recognize their flaws. I still think that there's a lot of great moments in them. They're still very important to me. I still enjoy watching them.
Yeah.
But I think in general, I'm pretty good at being able to enjoy something while also recognizing aspects of it that could be improved on.
Sure.
Or that maybe don't work as well for me. I think for The Last Jedi, I think some of the community brought me down on it a little bit. But I think I was able to kind of break out of that and realize that a lot of the worst people on the internet hated this movie. I don't want to be associated with them, so maybe I'm going to think about it more. And then also kind of get rid of, not let what I thought it was going to be color how I feel about it.
Right.
Because I don't think that's fair to a movie to come in with too many expectations and then to be disappointed that it's not what you thought it was going to be when it never said it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm a strong believer that you should, with any media and any franchise, enjoy what you enjoy about it. You know, it's fine to not like what you don't like about it.
Yeah.
But I think that both for the community and for the individual, it doesn't make sense to be eternally negative on something and to let something occupy your head in that regard.
Yes.
It just seems like a sad life to be obsessed with something you hate indefinitely.
Yeah.
That's so true. And I encounter it so much, especially online, that kind of attitude that's just gonna hate on something. And I don't quite get it. And it's like, I've been trying to figure that out myself. It's like, why, even amongst my own friends, when we're talking about something, if we hate on something too much, I just kind of get bored because it's like, well, I can hate on anything. And but it's just, you're right. It's so negative and it drags yourself down so much that why do it when you can just love the parts you want to love? I'm
curious because, I mean, that's dead on. Like, I think that's a big problem in the Star Wars fandom with certain aspects of it. I think that's why we're doing this show. But you have a podcast on Twilight that also has a very polarized fandom. Was that kind of thinking your inspiration for starting that? Was kind of trying to, tackle, like, why are we hating on something that people find fun?
Not exactly.
Okay.
My story with the Twilight podcast is not very straightforward, so I'll walk through that.
Okay.
So my friend started it with rotating guests, and she is a big Twilight fan, but she became a fan in like 2020, I think, as an adult.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I
the
was
dark days of COVID. Yeah.
Yes, I was one of her guests, and I had never read or watched Twilight. Everything I knew about it was like secondhand pop culture osmosis.
Gotcha.
But I really enjoyed being on the podcast. And then she was kind of losing steam. So we came to the agreement where I would be a permanent guest and then I would do the editing and she would do like the structure of the podcast, the summary. And that's been super fun. So we go through the books a chapter at a time and then we do the corresponding movie. and we are nearing the end of almost a New Hope, a New Moon. And I think we balance what we like about the books and what we don't. I think critique of social issues I kind of put in a different category than media critique.
Yeah.
Because I think if a book has problematic messaging about gender or race or sexuality, that is something that should be discussed.
Sure.
And, we should encourage creators to do better.
Yeah.
But we also point out what we like about the books. And I wouldn't say that I like Twilight in the way that the author probably intended. But I find them, one, I think they're very easy reads and I enjoy them in that regard. But I also think that they really offer an outlook into the background of someone very different than myself. And I do feel like I learn in that regard.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
What about for the YouTube channel you have for magic? Like, what kind of parallels can you draw from that fandom to the Star Wars one?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think that people in both fandoms sometimes fall into the trap of what I like about this property is the correct thing. And
Yep.
it should cater to me and what I want. And if they do something for someone with different interests, then that's offensive to me and I need to complain about it.
Right.
Which I think is, one, I think it's never been the case that's been for one specific person for both of these. I think the appeal from the beginning to a wide array of audiences. And I think it's more positive to the community and of the self, like I said, to recognize that some of this is for me. I think there's kind of a tier list of this is specifically for people like me who have the interests that I have. I'm going to really engage with that.
Yeah.
There's stuff that isn't specifically for me, but I can still find parts that I enjoy and get joy out of that. And then there's, I don't really vibe with this, but I think it's a good idea to recognize that that's okay. And life is going to go on. And other people deserve to also find joy, even if it's not something you specifically want. And I think you're just going to have a better time in life if you just take what you like, ignore what you don't like, and just go on.
It's so true. And I like how you were saying that you don't have to complain about the things you don't like when there's so much of what you might like is out there. And also that idea that fans sometimes feel as though it needs to be made for them, it needs to be catered to them, as opposed to challenge them. And this is a question I always like to ask guests is, do you prefer Star Wars to surprise and challenge you, or do you like it to be a little more familiar?
That's a really hard question to answer. Because I think for a lot of people, probably including myself, we say that we want surprises, but then sometimes the comfort really hits. And sometimes the challenging is challenging. Yeah. So is it too much of a cop-out if I say that I want a mix, but I am incapable of saying what specifically that mix is?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Do you have an idea of what kind of challenge you want to see from Star Wars?
Okay, that's a good question. I would like the live action properties to maybe explore social issues a little more overtly and also have some more representation. Yeah. I think the books and comics and games have more of that. So I don't know if I'd call that challenging, but it's a direction that I wish they would do more often.
I agree with that. I don't think that's we were chatting with, I think her episode's going to air before this one, so I think this is safe to say, but we were chatting with Meg Dowell yesterday, and she had a really interesting point kind of on a similar subject as this, which is that she wants to see more diversity in who is creating these stories, because that'll naturally lead to exactly what you're saying. You want to be challenged by that kind of being more of a reflection of topics that are bigger than just family, I think, maybe, and not to say that that's the only topic that is covered in Star Wars, but kind of what you said, to represent a galaxy that's as vast as our world feels. That that's actually, I think that I don't think you're alone in that thinking. That's kind of why I wanted to bring it up.
I also always enjoy when Star Wars does a new genre, which I think can be considered challenging.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people had doubts about Andor before it came out, and then I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of people who were like, every Star Wars show should be like Andor, which I don't want.
Right.
But I want
variety.
I want a lot of the shows to be as new as Andor in different regards. So I would love to see just any genre you can think of, make a Star Wars version. Like make a horror, make a rom-com.
A rom-com? I would watch the galactic rom-com.
Yeah.
I totally would. That's hilarious. Where would it take place?
Well, that's a good question. I think one of the characters should be a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's High Republic and it's a Jedi and a non-Jedi.
Yes.
And maybe it's like, what would happen if it didn't go wrong like it did in Revenge of the Sith? Like, what if this relationship had complications, but it was ultimately able to go positively and have a happy ending? What would that be like?
Yeah.
Let's just run out like Como. Let's do it again. But we'll do it right this time. I love it.
Of all the things that are announced right now, what are you looking forward to the most?
I am going to go with the Rey movie.
Oh, okay.
Because I would love to go forward in time. I'd love to see what's happening there. I would love to see sequel trilogy characters come back.
Yes.
I think I enjoy all those characters. I think they're all perfectly cast.
Yeah.
I would love to see them back in action. I especially would like to see Finn's characterization progress.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I do agree that he didn't have
abandoned him.
a great conclusion. So I'd love to see what he's up to, and I would like for them to, treat his actor better and give him better writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they kind of hint that he's force sensitive, and then it's kind of abandoned a little bit. Like it doesn't really, there's no conclusion or hint of a conclusion to that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even really set up for his own story.
I guess I would like to see him receive force training. Seems like maybe that's the direction they were hinted at. So I'd like to see that more concretely.
Yeah.
And I guess let him and Poe get together. I'm on board for that.
Okay, so I have to ask though then, so because you're talking about Finn, because what is your thoughts on the casino montage?
As in like the casino scene in The Last Jedi?
Yeah, because sorry, that was a very unclear question. I love The Last Jedi, but I have to fast forward through that chunk for some reason. It hasn't gripped me. But maybe it's because I don't know, maybe it's because they've not done right by those characters enough for me that I'm as invested. So I don't know, what are your thoughts? Because you seem to have really connected with the characters.
I think I do really like The Last Jedi. I think I've definitely turned around on it. I think it's a bit too long. I think in general, we're in a period where a lot of movies could maybe get like 20 minutes shaved off.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that the casino scene could be condensed.
Sure.
I think the concept is really great. I love the idea of what if we take the classic scum and villainy bar, but we make the like nice upper class version.
Yeah.
Because that's, a constant theme or a recurring trope location in Star Wars. There's the casino in A New Hope, or there's the cantina in A New Hope. There's Jabba's palace. There's the bar in Attack of the Clones. So what if we take that, but it's all these rich people, but they're not better people. Because
they're even worse.
Yeah, just because they're clean, it's a cleaner environment and they have nicer clothes. There's still a lot of criminals and monsters. Yeah. I think that's a really, really interesting idea. And I'm glad that exists in a Star Wars movie.
I like that. I like that scene so much more now.
Yes, I do too. I'm actually glad I asked that question.
You take the classic scum and villainy trope and flip it on its head. It's so perfect. That's awesome. What are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
So I think that the most important aspect is the themes. And I think that there are a handful of recurring themes that you're going to see in most Star Wars. So there is found family / unlikely allies. It's people coming together for a good cause to uplift the downtrodden, to defeat these great evils.
Right.
And I think whatever the context, I always enjoy seeing that. And then second, I think that behind all Star Wars, there's like a pulpy operatic feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it should be, to varying degrees, larger than life. This combination of genuine and silly.
Yeah.
And then third, aliens and ships and droids. Which I love all that stuff, but I think the heart of it is the themes and the genre.
I love pulpy operatic because that does so nail exactly what it is. That tone.
You mentioned droids, though. I have to ask now, who's your favorite? Because I'm a big droids person myself.
So I think I have two options.
Okay.
So first is C-3PO. And growing up, I always
can't see, but I just threw my fist in the air like Breakfast Club style.
Yeah. I always connected more with C-3PO than R2-D2.
Same.
Which I think seems like the rarer choice.
Yes.
But I find C-3PO charming. I like that even though he's not the bravest, he will do what's right in the end. I think he's compelling in that regard.
Yeah.
I think Anthony Daniels is great, and I love that he's in every Star Wars project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the only one who'll come back for anything.
I always love it when I hear his voice in the cartoons. Like when C-3PO appears in Clone Wars, and also even from the Droids cartoon from the early 80s or mid 80s, I just love hearing his voice as C-3PO.
His is the voice I hear when I'm reading comics with 3PO in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then second choice, I'm going to go K2SO.
Yes! Oh, such good call-outs. Yeah.
I think he's
You're not
funny.
biased at all.
I think his death is really heartfelt.
Yes.
And I think it's very impressive that they make you feel bad for the silly droid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's so well done.
Yeah.
I really like the design of that droid. I think it looks really cool. I like that it's gone on to appear in the Jedi games and other places.
What was your reaction to Rogue One as a film?
I really enjoyed Rogue One. It just has, especially the last third,
Yep.
is just a nonstop pulse-pounding adventure, and I thought that was really cool. I really like a larger scale combat in Star Wars. Just really any kind of science fiction or fantasy large-scale concept, or large-scale conflict, I get captivated by. So seeing the Battle of Scarif, both in space and on the ground, I thought was super cool.
Yeah.
That, the last 30 minutes of Rogue One, I can almost turn on at any time.
Literally
and just watch. It is so, and you're right, it's the large-scale combat, and I think the layering of the combat, where it's like the rebels appear and they have to get through that shield, but then there's that blockade of Star Destroyers, and then they have to go up against that, and then it comes down to the hallway with Darth Vader, and then meanwhile, Rogue One is on the land fighting I forget what they're called, the basically large-sized AT-ATs, or the cargo-bearing AT-ATs.
Meanwhile, Jin is having to actually climb for records.
And it goes from the broad space battle all the way down to that very personal battle between Jin and the Moff. I forget Krennic.
I agree. I think I've said this on this show before, but that last 30 minutes, you know what's going to happen. If you've seen the rest of the the rest of the films, you know the story, you know what's going to happen. And yet, they did such a good job of literally what you guys just both said, which was just making it like a microscope on all of the little tiny elements that made the bigger thing happen, that you sit there, even still having watched the movie a bunch of times, and I'm like, oh, they might make it. They might do it. They might get out of there. And that's so hard to do in storytelling especially when you know the ending because it's already out there. So good. Yeah. This is now a Rogue One appreciation podcast, and only that.
And actually, thinking about that scene makes me think of another option for my favorite Star Wars quote, or at least the one that
Go
I
for
think
it.
about a lot, which is when Chirik does his chant. I think it's "I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me."
Yes.
Yes.
I think about that a lot because it is like you could meditate to that.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting as something that you could get actual, real spiritual benefit from.
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful.
And it is very much in that moment his mantra.
Mhm.
What is your favorite Star Wars memory?
Ooh.
That's really, really tough. I think seeing The Force Awakens for the first time might have been the most excited I've been about a movie ever.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very special just to be
Yeah.
part of this big cultural moment. So from that angle, it might be that.
Yeah. It's it always, and I know it wasn't the first movie, the first Star Wars movie you saw in the theaters, but I still think when you're at a younger age, seeing these movies for the first time in the theater is just so impactful
Mhm.
and really lays the foundation for fandom.
Yeah.
Forever. I mean, look at it. 50 years later, I'm still talking about A New Hope as if it just came out in theaters this summer.
Yeah.
So this is our final question for you. We've talked a lot about your Star Wars journey, how the Clone Wars really impacted you and solidified your fandom, how you saw the differences on 6 different continents. And I'm sure they're like the differences are
Countries,
huge,
not continents.
Sorry, country.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, good point. Thank you.
But it was a community builder for you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. I knew it a C word. But after this conversation, do you think you can say, what does Star Wars mean to you?
I don't think I can put into words
Mhm.
everything that it means to me.
Mhm.
But for me, it is a big part of my family.
Mhm.
It is a big part of a lot of my friendships. It is just like a constant presence that I can turn back to, and it's ever growing, and there's so much to dive into.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So just all of those things, I guess.
Right on.
I love the ever growing. It just,
Yeah.
it's so true that it is ever growing. And that may be one of the best aspects of it is that, and to go back to what you were saying about, should the creators of Star Wars challenge you or provide something more familiar? And you were saying maybe somewhere in between.
Mhm.
I think you're right. It is because it's when it challenges us, the universe grows.
Mhm.
And when it gives us something familiar, it's the universe we know.
Yeah.
So I think both aspects are necessary. Thank you so much for joining us, Truman.
Thank you.
Can you tell me, where can people find you?
I was wondering if I could tell a quick Star Wars related story
Of course.
that I didn't get a chance to earlier, but I think is
yeah.
a big moment for
Maybe
me.
we should add the question, what have we not asked? Yeah.
Yes.
I guess I would just like to quickly shout out my family for all the Star Wars related things we've done together.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 2 brothers. For my youngest brother, we really enjoy playing Battlefront together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And for my middle brother, the oldest of my younger brothers, we just talk a lot of Star Wars. I think we are similar in how analytical we are towards
Mhm.
media. So I think we've had a lot of cool
Yeah.
conversations. And then finally, I'd like to share a very special memory for me. So through the State Department, my dad served as a diplomat in Afghanistan for a year.
Mm.
And the families weren't allowed to come for that. So we were in Missouri at the time. And my dad gifted me a Lego ATST that he bought on the base because there were so few options for something to get like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And it was like a collector's set.
Mhm.
It was probably too advanced for me. But just the fact that he got me something there that he knew I would like, that's just really, really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
So that's the most
Yes.
meaningful toy I've ever received. And then on one of his R&Rs, he brought it and we built it together, and I still
Oh.
have it. So that's just a special moment that I'd like
Yeah.
to share.
Yeah, that's a great moment. And I love that connection between family members.
Yeah. It just reinforces that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a really beautiful, a wonderful story. And it's so It's so awesome that your dad enjoys Star Wars as well and is able to share that with you, and you guys are able to share together.
Shout out to all the dads that
And,
have initiated us into the Star Wars cult. Yeah.
I live in a different state than my parents because of the school I go to.
Mm-hmm.
But every week I call them, and my mom and dad and we always talk about whatever the newest Star Wars thing is.
Love that. That's so cute.
That's great.
Right on. Did you give your handle so where people can find you?
No, not yet.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can find my mostly Magic the Gathering YouTube channel at Truman the Grey Merchant. I also have one video about Avatar The Last Airbender / Legend of Korra and one video about the Hellboy movies.
Right on.
You can find my Twilight podcast. It's called To My Chagrin. And our socials are Chagrin Pod on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find my Twitter at merchant_magic.
Right on.
And you can find my photography at Truman Deree Photography on Instagram.
Right on.
And we will put a lot of these links in the podcast notes so people can just click on through.
Thank you.
So read the notes, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
you
much
will find
information down there.
a lot of Star Wars references and metaphors throughout all of my work, because
Love
that's
that.
the way I see the world.
I love that. It's the way you see the world. Truman, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I really had a great conversation, and
Thanks for sharing.
I love your point of view.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I had a great time too. I love your podcast's perspective and mission.
Thanks.
I think it's a great thing that you're in this world making this fandom a better, more welcoming space.
Aww.
So thank you.
Well, I'll walk
Means
a little
a lot.
taller today.
Yeah, exactly. Truman, may the force be with you.
And you.
Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.